next week. First guy to get announced, though, is our next guest.
Superstar.
Entering, he is. I think if this isn't his 10th year on the show, it's close. Also, the most controversial. I've known Dave Richard a long time. Loved him.
Controversial, you say?
A little bit.
Okay.
Because Dave Richard has now infiltrated my social circle, if you will, and is now feeding. As a matter of fact, the draft I did last night, one of the guys I drafted against has now befriended CBS Sports' Dave Richard, and now has access to private and personal advice. That's what I call cheating on your partner. He joins us anyways. We can look past the controversy and welcome him back for yet another season of winning fantasy football advice. The Alf Morris expert himself, David Richard. Good morning, Dave.
Dave, you want to feel old?
Yes, I don't.
I mean, who doesn't, right? This is the 10-year anniversary of that Alfred Morris call.
Oh, my God. Is it really?
It's been a decade since Alfred Morris's rookie year.
Alf!
Oh, boy.
Oh, we were so in on Alf, and rightfully so, I should say.
Well, at the time.
Every year there's an Alf.
Yeah.
So, sure.
Go ahead.
But what I was going to say is you were in on that information
I was.
10 years ago.
I was.
You've been in on every sleeper that I've had for the last 10 years. I think it's okay if I can share my knowledge, not withhold knowledge, mind you, but share knowledge with people that you know.
These people I compete against,
Just
Dave. What if I was sharing my vast programming knowledge with the other fantasy football podcast you drafted? I mean, I would never do that. Jason, it's Phil. He's talking to Phil.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's tough to say no to Phil.
I understand that, but Phil doesn't need any help.
Mm.
Jeez.
It's Phil.
It's Phil.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's fine. How was your off season? Everything good? I know there's a lot of questions to get to. Really, welcome back. We love you terribly, and I hope everything. I hope you did something fun in the off season. I hope you're ready to get going for the new one.
I did not have much of an off season, man.
Oh,
the
wow.
NFL kept us busy. All the moves that were made, and all the players that changed teams. There's never been an off season that we just had before in the history of the National Football League, and kept us on our toes. And we. A lot of research that we did in February and March was obsolete by the time we got to May.
Right.
And then that research got obsolete by the time we got to August. And then information that we have now is dead in a week because things change so fast. And every little move, there's a ripple effect, a domino effect. The one thing that I'm seeing, and it's actually making me frustrated, and I don't know if I should fix it or how to fix it, is that people – by and large, are just not paying as much attention to fantasy. They're still playing fantasy, David.
Right.
But they're not adjusting. They're not on top of the news. I was in a draft last night, and there were multiple fantasy managers that I was drafting with that I think they were drafting players based on information or sentiment, I guess you could say, that's outdated. They're running backs that shouldn't be going as high as they are. I should be loving this because this is one of my big leagues, and I'm going to crush these guys. But I also know that if this is happening in my leagues where they know they're playing against me, and they know that I do this, and they're trying to take me down, then in all the other home leagues across the country, man, there are people that are they're reaching for quarterbacks, and they're still thinking that George Kittle is a top 2 or 3 fantasy tight end, and they still think Julio Jones is going to be amazing. And it's this wave of people who just haven't been up on the league in the last year or two, or even week or two. And I just feel like if you're going to win at fantasy football, you got to know the very latest with every player. Yeah. This is one thing that's great about CBS Sports, by the way. When you're drafting on CBS Sports, we've got updates on every single player, and they're all recent. You're going to know what you're getting before you draft them.
And Dave, obviously a lot of drafts are coming up if they haven't happened. Like you had another one last night. People are getting ready this weekend, early next week, whenever they are. Let's start near the top of the draft then, I guess. How do they avoid those mistakes? I don't know, universally, I know it depends on scoring, but a rough guide on who your top three, let's say, would be in fantasy.
My top three, and this is in a one quarterback league, are Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, and Austin Eckler. You'll notice that they're all running backs, no wide receivers. You'll notice there's no Christian McCaffrey because he's at 4. And I think that he's a top 5 guy, but not the top guy. He's just missed too many games. There's too much downside. I'm kind of nervous putting him at 4, but I see the players that I have after him. And I know that McCaffrey's got upside to crush those guys, so I just can't do it. You'll notice that there's no quarterbacks there. That would change if it's a 2-quarterback league or a Superflex league, in which case the top 3 picks would be quarterbacks. It would be Josh Allen, it would be Justin Herbert, it would be Patrick Mahomes. And that's if there's 6 points for touchdowns. That changes if the scoring for touchdowns is different for passing. Lamar Jackson would lead over Patrick Mahomes. So, yes, I think point number 1 is that you got to know your league scoring system. You got to know how many players you start at each position before you go into the draft. That seems like obvious advice. Again, if people aren't paying attention to players and the movements over the NFL over the last 6 days, 6 weeks, 6 months, then they might not be paying attention to the rules of their league too. And the other thing to take away is that running backs are still going to be heavy at the top of fantasy drafts.
Dave Richards, CBS Sports, joining us. Hey, you, my ears perked up right at the beginning where you said, in 1-quarterback leagues. This is a long time conversation you and I've had, and we update it every single year. Are you seeing more of an uptick in 2-quarterback leagues?
I'm seeing an uptick in Superflex leagues. I think we're starting to see, and I don't think we're seeing it in casual home leagues.
Sure.
People that just, they want to be in the office fantasy league or neighbors or friends, and they don't want to get too deep in the weeds. Those are 1-quarterback leagues. But Dave, you know that we're crazy for fantasy football. We love it. We love to win. We love to beat our friends, especially one specific friend.
That's correct.
And you want to take them down. And in those leagues where everybody's juiced up and into it and psyched, and they do their research, and they're not doing the things that I talked about 3 minutes ago, that's where you're seeing more Superflex leagues. And Superflex leagues are basically 2-quarterback leagues because you have the option to start a 2nd quarterback. You don't have to do it.
Right.
But if you don't do it, you're giving up an edge to everybody else in your league. And in those formats, I am going quarterback heavy very early. Basically, 2 of my first 3 picks will be quarterback.
Wow.
Because I don't want to be caught with one of my quarterbacks being somebody who could be benched. I don't know why the example that came to my mind is Mitchell Trubisky. He's for sure getting benched at some point.
Right.
But also like Baker Mayfield, where there's uncertainty. Mac Jones, Davis Mills, those guys aren't necessarily getting benched, but there's uncertainty with them. I'm looking at trying to get 2 of my first maybe 18 quarterbacks in my rankings, and I can accomplish that with my first 3 picks. But I also know that quarterbacks are going to fly off the board in a major way in that format.
Yeah, Dave, how about we've talked quarterbacks a little bit, and certainly running backs. Who are your top couple of receivers? If because we know pass happy league receivers, if you get points per catch, that kind of thing. Who are you ranked near the top of your receiver list?
I got a 1 and 1A. I've got Cooper Kupp and Justin Jefferson. The only reason why I would say Kupp's name before Jefferson's name is because Kupp's got the track record of not only getting double-digit targets but also touchdowns. Last year he had a ton of them, and I think the Rams are going to continue to do what they do throwing the football. I don't even know if they have a choice necessarily, given the state of their run game. And Cooper Kupp's going to get plenty of targets, and he should be just as good as he. Well, no, I can't say that. I can't say that he's going to be just as good as he was last year because that was the best year for a wide receiver, like in the history of fantasy football. He will have a chance to be the best receiver this year, just not as good as last year. Jefferson's right on his tail, but there's kind of a track record with him not getting a ton of touchdowns. I do like the new direction of the Minnesota offense. I do think they'll throw more. I just don't know if that means 10 touchdowns for Justin Jefferson. Everything else about him is great. After those 2, I'm looking at 5 names that I think are very close together. Jamar Chase is at the top of that list. Devontae Adams with the Raiders. Tyreek Hill with the Dolphins. Stephon Diggs with the Bills. And CeeDee Lamb in full PPR with the Cowboys. Dallas does not have a great second wide receiver. They've got a good tight end that's going to get a lot of targets. But I think CeeDee Lamb is going to see a lot of targets. And I saw it last year in training camp that Dak Prescott was just pelting him, just trying to get in the same range of where CeeDee Lamb's body was. And Lamb was coming down with catches then. He should get more targets this year.
Last thing for you. Who going into this draft, who's this year's Alf or Alf-like player? And then if you wouldn't mind just segueing right into where can people see, hear, touch, and feel you.
I'm going to give you 3 names. You cannot touch me. The 3 names are Isaiah McKenzie of the Buffalo Bills. He's number 1. David Njoku of the Cleveland Browns. That's a tight end, number 2. And Jerick McKinnon is number 3. He's an old running back with Kansas City. You can hear about those names and many more names in about an hour and 20 minutes on Fantasy Football Today, live from CBS Sports HQ.com. If you can get Wi-Fi, you can watch it for free. Fantasy Football Today.
10 years, man. 10 years. How about that, Dave?
Alf.
How about that? 10 years of Alf.
He was good. He was good. And we've had some hits along the way.
Yes, we
it's
have.
not like it's been Alf and nothing else. Darren Waller was a hit.
Darren Waller was
I don't
a
know if
grand slam.
Waller was a grand slam. A hit was Jonnu Smith because he was good for half a year.
Jonnu Smith was
some duds.
Yeah, Jonnu Smith was just fine for a half a year, by the way, and I traded him high, so thank you for that.
Yeah, there you go. That was a win. And here's the other thing, Dave. Every other sleeper that I've had, almost all of them, if they weren't good the first year, they were good the second year. Remember that when you see Elijah Moore's name in drafts.
That's when you run your keepers. Buddy, appreciate you. We'll talk to you in a week. Thank you so much.
Good, gentlemen. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Take care. It's Dave Richard. We are late for